Okay, I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Ramapo Town Board. This is our meeting of Wednesday, May 13th, 2015. And I'd like to ask our clerk, Christian Sampson, to call the roll, please.
Councilman, Deputy Supervisor Withers.
Present.
Councilman Ullman.
Here.
Councilman Friedman.
Here.
Councilwoman Charles. Supervisor St. Lawrence.
Here, I'd like to ask Deputy Supervisor Withers to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we're going to go through the voting portion of the meeting now, since we are down one council person and there's some other commitments that people have made. So we want to go through the voting portion first. And we wanted all of our young students from Suffern to be able to participate in that. They were at the workshop, so they'll get to see the culmination of that. So I'll put it over to our town attorney, Michael Klein.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor, members of the board. 1A1 on the agenda is the first of a number of agreements to be approved tonight or setting dates for hearings. The first of these is to set a public hearing date on a proposed local law which involves best value contracts. This results from an amendment to Section 103 of the General Municipal Law, and this has been recommended by our Director of Purchasing. So the requested public hearing date would be Wednesday, June 10th at 8 p.m.
Okay, and that will be publicized. Moved by? Councilman Ullman, seconded by?
Withers?
Deputy Supervisor Withers. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Each year, the town enters into an agreement for alcohol and drug testing services. This resolution would approve an agreement with Integra Health Corporate Solutions.
Moved by?
Withers?
Deputy Supervisor Withers, seconded by? Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Michelle Antosca, our Director of Parks and Recreation, has recommended to the board that we enter into an agreement, a license agreement with SLS Sports, Inc. They will improve and be able to use the Orchard Hills field for softball.
We're going to table that until we wanted to get the exact hours that are going to be used on that.
Okay.
Okay? So,
The next resolution is a change order involving Ray Palmer Associates, and this is for pool repairs at Camp Scuffy.
Withers?
moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, seconded by? Friedman. Councilman Friedman. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
The Tallman Fire Department has requested use of Camp Scuffy for its annual picnic. This resolution authorizes that use subject to an agreement and insurance.
Withers?
Moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, seconded by?
Friedman.
Councilman Friedman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously.
For a number of years, we've had an agreement with a group called Friends of Harmony Hall. The Friends help with programmatic activities and fundraising for the renovation and use of Harmony Hall, and this agreement extends the current agreement between the town and the Friends.
Moved by? Ullman. Councilman Ullman, seconded by?
Friedman.
Councilman Friedman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously.
We've retained Mr. Daniel Duffy, who's both an engineer and an attorney, to represent the town with regard to United Water's matters with the Public Service Commission. This resolution extends that agreement to include the surcharge case as well as the desalination needs case and the rate case.
Withers?
Moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, seconded by Supervisor St. Lawrence. This, just to make note that this is for the new portion, the new case that the town has gone in against United Water for the $40+ million they still want to try to access from the failed desal plant. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye. Opposed.
3-1.
Now, is that Friedman?
Mr. Friedman voted no. Council?
We have one tax surcharge settlement on tonight. This is property owner Teferis Gedalia. This involves a partial tax exemption for tax year 2013 and 14.
Moved by
Withers?
Deputy Supervisor Withers, seconded by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously.
The next two resolutions are related. The first of these is a seeker determination. This involves the proposed sale of excess land that the town owns to one of the nearby property owners. The first resolution adopts a negative declaration indicating that there will be no significant adverse environmental impact to the sale of this property.
Moved by
Withers?
Deputy Supervisor Withers, seconded by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries
And
unanimously.
the second resolution does two things. Number one, declares this property surplus and authorizes its sale for the appraised value of $195,000 to the proposed purchaser.
And that was our appraised value.
That's correct.
Moved by
Withers?
Deputy Supervisor Withers, seconded by
Friedman.
Councilman Friedman. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
We've received a request by the Village of Montebello, which has taken title to two properties that were damaged in hurricanes. This resolution would indicate that the town board would support Montebello's request to the New York State Legislature to retroactively exempt those two properties.
Moved by
Friedman.
Councilman Friedman, seconded by Deputy Supervisor Withers. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously.
And finally, we have a request by the property owner at 51 Francis Place. As their property was being constructed, part of the drainage structure that the town required was placed on a town right-of-way. So they've requested permission to keep that drainage structure on the town right-of-way. And the board, if it approves this resolution, would authorize that to happen. This is subject to a hold harmless agreement and other terms to be incorporated in a recordable document that will follow the property owner, who will remain responsible for any work that's necessary on the town's right-of-way.
And it will follow in the deed of the property.
It will be a recordable instrument that will bind future owners of that property.
Okay. Moved by?
Withers?
Moved by Councilman Friedman, seconded by Deputy Supervisor Withers, or excuse me, moved by Ullman. That was moved by Ullman and seconded by Withers. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Is that all you have, Counsel?
That is.
Okay. The next is a police matter, authorization for 3 officers to attend the Criminal Interdiction Training Conference in Albany, New York, May 19th and 20th. Moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, second by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. The next item is an intermunicipal agreement with the 9/11 dispatcher training with the County of Rockland. Moved by Councilman Ullman, second by Deputy Supervisor Withers. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Authorization for 2 officers to attend the RAD training in Cobleskill, New York, June 15th through June 17th. Moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, seconded by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. They got smart enough to have the second one in Orlando, Florida.
And Withers?
Unfortunately, it was in the summertime, so this is authorization for 2 police officers to attend the RAD training in Orlando, Florida, July 20th through 23rd. They should be doing this in January. Deputy Supervisor has moved that, seconded by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. The next item on the agenda is purchasing. Our Director of Purchasing, Mona Montel.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. The next item on the agenda is in the reference to the acceptance of the bid for fertilizer, asking you to accept it as listed in the resolution.
Moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, seconded by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Item 3A2 on the agenda is the acceptance of the bid for calcium hypochlorite as listed in your resolution.
Moved by Councilman Ullman, second by Deputy Supervisor Withers. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is our Town Clerk. I'll recognize our Town Clerk, Christian Sampson.
Mr. Supervisor.
Before I do, I just want to recognize again, I want to thank you for your service as President of the New York State Town Clerks Association. You just turned that title over, and we thank you for representing all 932 towns in the state of New York.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
You're welcome.
Well, this resolution is for me to participate in a New York Association of Local Government Record Officers School in Lake George early next month.
Well, you picked a great part of the state.
I'm sure. It's a great state we have. That's one thing I've learned as the president
Absolutely.
of our association. It's a beautiful, vast.
Absolutely. Moved by Councilman Ullman, seconded by
Withers?
Deputy Supervisor Withers. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The next on the general matters, 5A, memorializing resolution, fiber optic lines. I will recognize our town attorney.
Yes, this is a resolution which has been recommended by Mr. Shedler, our assessor, as well as our consultants on industrial matters. This would support legislation that would seek to avoid exempting property which is involved fiber optic lines and the companies that support them. There's a significant amount of taxable property that would be affected by this, both in Ramapo and throughout the state, and this endorses legislation that would prevent those properties from being exempt from taxation.
And I want to make it clear that the new legislation passed by the state of New York describes electromagnetic transmission of data. And Verizon says that does not include fiber. We believe it does. We have experts that testified at the hearing to say that fiber should be included. Verizon wants that not to be included in their taxes. The state of New York refuses to give us the information on this. But we were able to get information that it is not included in the taxes, and it should be. So this is a great work done by our special counsel, Paul Goldman, and our town assessor, Scott Shedler. Okay, moved by?
Withers?
Moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, second by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Next item on the agenda is acceptance of a donation from MVP Healthcare, Inc. Moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, seconded by Councilman Friedman. All those in favor say aye.
This is going
Opposed?
towards the, well, all in favor.
All in favor?
This is going towards the African Twinning Committee?
It's $240, yes. That was unanimous.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And the next is the cancellation of the May 27th workshop and town board meeting. We will have that meeting at the end of the month. Will be May 21st on Thursday, when we have our town board meeting and police matters. And the Memorial Day will be canceled. Next is boards and commissions, reappointment of the site selection
motion.
committee. Oh, I'm sorry, motion to cancel that meeting moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, seconded by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Boards and commissions to reappoint the site selection committee members. Moved by Councilman Ullman, seconded by Deputy Supervisor Withers. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Council, do you have any other new business?
I do not, although there are two proclamations on the agenda. One, Councilman Withers has been instrumental in bringing to the board's attention, so perhaps it would be appropriate to address that before Mr. Withers
Would you
has
read
to-
it into the record?
Or our town clerk will, which,
Okay. Do we need to vote on this proclamation? To accept
Yes.
this? Okay, moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, seconded by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously, and we'll have the clerk read the proclamation.
Mr. Town Chair, that'd be the Police Week proclamation. Whereas the Congress and President of the United States have designated May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day and the week in which it falls as Police Week, and whereas the Police Department of the town of Ramapo play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of the town of Ramapo, and whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the problems, duties, and responsibilities of their police department, and that members of our police department recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life and property, by protecting them against violence and disorder, and by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression or intimidation. And whereas the police department of the town has grown to be a modern and scientific law enforcement agency which unceasingly provides a vital police service, now therefore be it resolved by the town board of the town of Ramapo that it calls upon all citizens of the town and upon all patriotic, civic, and educational organizations to observe the week of May 10th through May 16th, 2015 as Police Week, with appropriate ceremonies in which all of our people may join in commemorating police officers, past and present, who by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities have rendered a dedicated service to their communities, and in doing so have established for themselves an enviable and enduring reputation for preserving the rights and security of all citizens. And be it further resolved that the Town Board calls upon all citizens of the town to observe Friday, May 15th, 2015, as Peace Officers Memorial Day in honor of those peace officers who, through their courageous deeds, have lost their lives or have been disabled in the performance of duty.
It's my honor, Mr. Supervisor, member of the board, to move this.
Moved by Deputy Supervisor Withers, second by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Council, did you have another proclamation?
We do. This is a proclamation entitled Building Safety Month, May 2015. Would you like that read into the record at this point? Whereas our town of Ramapo is continuing efforts to address the critical issues of safety, energy efficiency, water conservation, and resilience in the built environment that affect our citizens, both in everyday life and in times of natural disaster, give us confidence that our structures are safe and sound. And whereas our confidence is achieved through the devotion of vigilant guardians, building safety and fire prevention officials, architects, engineers, builders, tradespeople, laborers, and others in the construction industry who work year-round to ensure the safe construction of buildings. And whereas these guardians, dedicated members of the International Code Council, use a governmental consensus process that brings together local, state, and federal officials with expertise in the built environment to create and implement the highest quality codes to protect Americans in the buildings where we live, learn, work, worship, and play. And whereas the international codes, the most widely adopted building safety, energy, and fire prevention codes in the nation, are used by most U.S. cities, counties, and states. These modern building codes also include safeguards to protect the public from natural disasters such as hurricanes, snowstorms, tornadoes, wildfires, floods, and earthquakes. And whereas Building Safety Month is sponsored by the International Code Council to remind the public about the critical role of our community's largely unknown guardians of public safety, our local code officials who assure us safe, efficient, and livable buildings. And whereas resilient communities start with building codes, the theme for Building Safety Month 2015 encourages all Americans to raise awareness of the importance of building safe and resilient construction, fire prevention, disaster mitigation, water safety and conservation, energy efficiency, and new technologies in the construction industry. Building Safety Month 2015 encourages appropriate steps everyone can take to ensure that the places where we live, learn, work, worship, and play are safe and sustainable, and recognizes that countless lives have been saved due to the implementation of safety codes by local and state agencies. And whereas each year, the observance of Building Safety Month, Americans are asked to consider projects to improve building safety and sustainability at home and in the community, and to acknowledge the essential service provided to all of us by local and state building departments, fire prevention bureaus, and federal agencies in protecting lives and property. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Town Board of the Town of Ramapo that it hereby proclaims the month of May 2015 as Building Safety Month, and the Board encourages our citizens to join with their communities in participation in Building Safety Month activities.
Moved by
Withers?
Deputy Supervisor Withers, seconded by Councilman Freeman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you, Council, for reading that proclamation. On that previous proclamation, I want to remind everybody that on May 16th, there's going to be a game between the Boulders and the New York Police Department at Provident Bank Park. It's at 6:30. The proceeds will go to the New York Police Foundation to help people that have been injured in the line of duty. And throwing out the first pitch will be Andrew Dossie from Stony Point, who was shot in the Bronx, and also Aliro Pellerano. And the two of them will be there. He's also from Rockland County. They were both shot in an incident in the Bronx. So we welcome everybody to come out there and contribute to the New York Police Department Foundation. Okay, did we vote on that last resolution?
No, sir.
All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Actually, I think you did.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is our Department of Public Works, Director, Ted Zarenko. Ted?
Good evening, Mr. Supervisor and Town Board. I'm here tonight with Deputy Director of Public Works, Mike Sadowski, and we're glad to be able to report to you and our residents about the Town of Ramapo's efforts in complying with the Phase 2 stormwater regulations. The town operates two separate systems, a sanitary sewer system for transporting sewage to the Rockland County Sewer District for treatment, and also a stormwater drainage system which handles runoff from rainfall, snowmelt, and the like. The stormwater drainage system is designated as a municipal separate storm system, or an MS4, by both the federal EPA and the New York State DEC. There are many MS4s in Rockland County, and the federal and state guidelines and regulations apply to all of us. The county, each of the 5 towns, and each of the 19 villages all maintain drainage systems and are considered MS4s. In addition, other agencies, such as New York State DOT and the Thruway Authority, are also considered MS4s. And even school districts, fire districts, and ambulance districts, even libraries that have their own storm drainage systems are considered non-traditional MS4s. As an MS4, we're currently operating under a New York State Source Point Discharge Elimination Systems, or SPEEDIES permit. It's permit number GP 010-002. In order to remain compliant with the permit, the town had to develop a stormwater management program that incorporates 6 major components. And these components are public education and outreach, public involvement and participation, illicit discharge detection and elimination, construction site stormwater runoff control, post-construction stormwater management, and the final one is pollution prevention and good housekeeping for municipal operations. The stormwater management program is a living document that gets periodically updated. We began filing an original notice of intent, or NOI, in 2002. Each year, we must review our progress in meeting these goals that are established in the program and submit a yearly report to the New York State DEC. Each year, the town must establish and successfully accomplish specific goals as indicated in the original NOI, and every year the efforts need to build upon previous years' the previous year's progress and success. If this presentation seems familiar to the board, it's for a good reason. This is our 12th year of doing it. We've been reporting on a program, and as well, this is the 5th year of the current 5-year SPEEDIES permit. So the purpose of tonight's presentation is to let the public know that they have the opportunity to review the draft annual report and provide written comments. We have a hard copy of the document in the DPW office located at 16 Pioneer Avenue in Tallman. There's also a draft report available. It's posted online on the town's website, www.ramapo.org. The comment period will remain open until May 20th, that's a week from today, and we will incorporate any comments into the final report. Now I'd like to turn the presentation over to Deputy Director of Public Works, Mike Sadowski, for an explanation of what was done this year to meet our goals. Mike?
Okay, Mr. Sadowski.
Thank you, Ted, Mr. Supervisor, members of the Town Board. It's a pleasure to be here tonight again to review the town's achievements during the 5th year of the second 5-year permit, GP 10-002. I'm going to now briefly review each of the minimum control measures contained in our draft annual report and stormwater management plan and discuss some of the accomplishments under each category. The first one, public education and outreach. Town of Ramapo's website contains a library of informative materials, including public service announcements, and pamphlets we've been distributing over the years. The PSA links can be found by clicking Public Works in the drop-down menu under the Departments tab. Over 400 pieces of literature on topics such as constructing rain gardens, the differences between storm and sanitary sewers, and the importance of keeping pollution out of our waterways were picked up by the public at Town Hall and at the Department of Public Works. We find that many people that are coming to our office and picking up leaf bags and recycling bins or conducting other town business are also taking these pamphlets and flyers with them as they leave. There are copies of some of this literature on the table in the back if any of you are interested in taking some with you. The town again partnered with Cornell Cooperative Extension of Rockland, and we're a founding member of the Stormwater Consortium of Rockland County. Cornell conducted vital outreach activities on our behalf involving businesses and the general public. Cornell's website also contains a stormwater section where additional information can be obtained. The stormwater section was recently redesigned and is more information than ever before, including upcoming stormwater classes for employees and the public. The consortium extended its relationship with WRCR and contracted for another year of radio shows and promotional broadcasts. On 10 separate occasions, shows related strictly to stormwater protection were broadcast. Efforts were made to place both the audio files as well as a written synopsis of each program so that those that were not able to listen to WRCR live can visit the website and either click on the audio link or read the summary. Minimum control measure number 2, public involvement and participation. Advertising for last year's Year 11 presentation and this year's Year 12 report are posted on the main page of the town's website. Last year's presentation on Year 11, as well as this one's, was broadcast on local cable television, as is this year's. The town hired 2 Rockland Conservation and Service Corps workers to assist in performing a variety of tasks in our program. These workers applied no dumping drains to streams decals on catch basins throughout unincorporated Ramapo. The decals look like this. And 133 of these decals were applied. You zoomed in on that? Great. Subsequent to these decals being applied, the workers went door to door visiting homeowners and educating them about stormwater pollution. Decal education this year occurred on Dover Terrace, Lingeries Drive, Zabriskie Terrace, Solon Road, and Crestview Terrace. Flyers were given out to the 24 households that answered the door and were left for the 52 households that did not. We intend to continue this program again this year with a new group of Rockland Conservation and Service Corps workers. As always, if there are any volunteer organizations or scouting groups that are interested in applying these as a service project, feel free to give me a call. It's not that difficult to do that. Lastly, Ramapo assisted Keep Rockland Beautiful in advertising for the April 2014 Great American Spring Cleanup. Every year, this event continues to grow. Approximately 35 town volunteers participated on approximately 8 cleanup sites in Ramapo last spring. Several other volunteers cleaned up some areas in southern Hillcrest this past fall. There was an additional large cleanup involving about 60 people cleaning up areas along Pascack Road, Crystal Lynn Drive, and Mirror Lake Road in last September. Number 3, illicit discharge detection and elimination. We continue to add new catch basins and other stormwater structures, as well as modifying the piping systems on our GIS digital storm drain map. The map behind me is a compilation of what we've done. I know it's hard to see here, but each of these dots represent a stormwater structure, and there are conduits and pipe directions on this map as well. We visually inspected and photographed for a 9th time, and on some occasions, 10th time, all but one of our 190 outfall structures in unincorporated Ramapo. That last outfall, though, we found a couple weeks ago. It was buried by a resident doing some clearing, but we've now photographed it and documented that one as well. We also scanned the DEC-approved reporting forms into the computer to facilitate future year-to-year comparisons, should that become necessary. The Ramapo Sewer Department flushed 7.7 miles of sanitary sewers in a preventative maintenance program to prevent sewage overflows, and many more miles were flushed as well in the villages. Number 4, construction site stormwater runoff control. This was the 6th year the town began enforcing requirement that weekly construction site inspections be performed by certified personnel on projects that exceed a certain size. 16 of the largest construction projects in town had certified professionals performing these weekly inspections in the last reporting year. This is the largest number of active projects we've ever had under this program, and I think there were 6 different consultants that were actually performing these weekly inspections throughout the town. Inspections on these larger projects, as well as the more numerous ones, were conducted by members of the Department of Public Works, as well as the Building Department, and the Highway Department road inspector performed many more site inspections than he ever had before. The inspection results that DPW and Highway come up with are forwarded to Tony Malley at the Building Department for his action. As was the case in previous years, encouraging, cajoling, and motivating the builders, contractors, and developers to follow these mandated procedures continues to be a challenge, although several did attend the DEC 4-hour erosion and sediment control class this past December, so that's an encouraging sign. Minimum control measure number 5, post-construction stormwater management. This section involves construction sites and the quality of runoff that runs off these sites after construction has been completed. Construction sites over an acre and that meet certain parameters must have water quality measures installed. Ed Moran of the Engineering Department primarily reviews the stormwater pollution prevention plans, or SWIPs, on behalf of the town. He has reviewed plans for these facilities often multiple times for approximately 12 different proposed construction sites located throughout unincorporated Ramapo. This is the largest number he's ever reviewed in a single year as well. Eventually, these water quality facilities are either dedicated to the town once they're completed, or they remain the responsibility of the property owner, condo association, co-op, things of that sort. Last year, we reported that the town was responsible for maintenance on only one of these structures, and that was the 2 organic filters we have at the Joseph T. St. Lawrence Community Health and Sports Center. This past year, we added 2 more to the list that are now the Highway Department's responsibility to maintain. One other task that the town performed was done by the Highway Department. In November 2014, they installed 21 new retrofit inlet covers on catch basin curb caps on the Briarcliff Road, Hilltop Lane area of Muncie to help prevent litter from entering into the storm drains and eventually into Lake Suzanne. We have an example of one over here. It's rather heavy. For those of you that know what curb caps are, they get mounted to the front of the curb caps that normally has a big gap. This prevents things such as milk jugs, large pieces of cardboard from getting into the catch basins and then clogging the pipes, which causes flooding as well.
How do the raccoons get in?
The small ones can still get in. Or they find ones that don't have them. We have approximately 145 of these inlet covers installed at present. You know, we do probably about a dozen or so a year, if not more. Minimum control measure 6, pollution prevention and good housekeeping for municipal operations. Major accomplishments in unincorporated Ramapo include the street sweeping of 130 lane miles of road, as well as over 61 acres of parking lots. Now, some of these parking lots are in the villages, but because they're town facilities, we take credit for sweeping them under this program. 337 catch basins in unincorporated Ramapo were cleaned by the Highway Department, and I know in their contracts with the villages, they clean out many more. Each of the 9 patented Polydac filters located in catch basins that surround the Highway DPW yard were changed this past year. 8 were done by our Service Corps workers in late July, and the 9th one was done soon after by the Highway Department. Ted over here has an example of one of the smaller ones. The Highway Department had to do one that was about twice that size for an extra large catch basin. These devices continue to filter out hydrocarbons and heavy metals before they enter into the storm drain system. The last component of this minimum control measure is employee education. 5 higher-level Highway Department employees attended a December 9th 4-hour erosion and sediment control course at the Fire Training Center. That's the same one that some of those builders attended as well. 6 planning board and zoning board members and 1 engineer attended a class on watershed design in October of 2014. And 27 highway, DPW, and parks workers attended a class on best management practices for pollution prevention for municipal operations on June 12th of 2014. As previously indicated, that's just a summary of the activities that we performed in this past year under the town stormwater management program. Each year, the intent is to improve and build on our prior year's activities. As Ted had previously indicated, more detailed information can be found by viewing the actual Year 12 draft report that's available for one more week at our offices at 16 Pioneer Avenue in Tallman. It was also posted online this past Monday at www.ramapo.org. You can access it by going to the main page, click on the Departments tab, click on Public Works, and kind of like the PSAs, there's a spot for the annual reports, and you will see this year's draft as well as there's several more from prior years as well. The complete stormwater management plan, which is what Ted's holding here, this loose leaf binder, which has even more information and a lot of the backup for what we talked about here tonight is in here. That's only available for viewing at our office. That's not digital. That's not online. So if you want to see that, make an appointment and you come to our office. The draft annual report will continue to be available for review and comments through May 20th, which is a week from today, next Wednesday. At that time, we'll incorporate any comments we get from the public. We'll put that into our final report, and then our final report has to be at the DEC by June 1st, 2015, as per their regulations. That concludes the formal portion of the report. At this point, I can take any questions you have.
I would
or
like to
any
ask a couple
members of the
questions,
audience.
and then maybe anybody else in the town board that want to ask any questions or make any statements.
Okay.
First, I want to thank you because you have been the president of the consortium for many years, and you've done a fantastic job, and I know you've just passed that torch along, and we want to thank you for that leadership that you have shown in that. You did not show the curb caps that we put down. You showed the cover, but you didn't show the actual curb caps that have stamped in them this catch basin drains
Yes.
into our waterways. And
They're a little
fish on it.
heavy for me to
I
carry.
know, but and it has it says right on there. What does it say?
Yes, there's a decal in there, similar to this on
But
on
it's
some of the
stamped
ones that
right
are made.
onto right from the foundry onto the curb.
Correct,
to
yes,
the-
absolutely.
I was amazed that the County of Rockland and the project that they did along New Hempstead Road, where they put in hundreds of these caps, did not incorporate that. And I quizzed you about that. And then I was even more surprised to find out that the County of Rockland has never joined the consortium, and they're just a tertiary member. And I think it was a great missed opportunity by the county in that project. It would cost nothing more to have put in the caps on each one of those catch basins that said, this drains into our water system. So I just want to make that point. The other thing is, I think people should come over to your DPW because it is a totally geothermal building, and I know that you give tours to people to show how your building is heated and cooled, strictly by putting pipes into the ground, a system that goes through these pipes, so the water comes up at about 56 degrees, and then it is instantly air conditioned in the summer, and then with a heat pump, you add 12 degrees to get to 68 degrees in the winter. So it's a very, very efficient system you have there, and it's impressive, and I know many residents have seen that and have talked to me about it. The other thing is the map you have there, you have documented every one of the outfalls in the town of Ramapo, labeled them, documented them, and show which direction they flow into and out of, and where they fall into the stream. And taking that to the next step of going to cloud technology, we now, anytime anybody works in one of those catch basins and one of those outfalls, whether it's the highway or the DPW or the sewer or anybody, that will be able to be attached to that catch basin, along with pictures, the most recent pictures of the catch basin, when the cleaning was done on this. And it is just a fantastic job that you're doing, utilizing cloud technology to do that. And why that is so important is because when we get a big storm like Sandy, and then FEMA comes in and they say, well, if you don't have pictures and you don't show what the maintenance was and what that outfall looked like ahead of time, then we're not going to pay for it to be fixed. I know Deputy Supervisor Withers has worked very close with Mike Riley, our intergovernmental agency person, and you have to fight it out with FEMA. So what you're doing is helping future generations, not just in protection of the water and the environment and our aquifers, but also in documenting what our infrastructure looks like, so when we need to replace it after a dramatic storm. I know you referenced the storms in there. So I just wanted to make that point. And you said 131 miles of roadway just in the unincorporated area were swept.
They swept 100, yes.
And since the town has the contract for many villages to do all of those services, then that does not include what we would sweep in Montebello or other villages.
That's correct.
Would residents be able to find that information in the detailed report, or would they have to go to the consortium or to a village?
No, I mean, the highway department could print out a similar report for each village.
So if somebody out there watching, if someone lives in a village, they could call up you and you could get that number for them?
Or through the highway department directly.
Okay.
I know some of the village engineers have done that and asked for the number of miles swept in a particular village. So
Those were some of the points that I wanted to make, and I think you do a very good job of not just the work you do, but in the detailed reporting that you do on the stormwater management. Are there any other council members that have any comments or questions? Great job. Thank you, Mr. Sadowski. Thank you, Ted. Okay, with that, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the public scoping session for Pascack Ridge.
Mr. Supervisor, with your permission, I'll read into the record the notice of the public scoping session, which reads as follows. This is from the town of Rampo Town Hall. The subject is the Pascack Ridge Comprehensive Plan Amendment and Zone Change. The town received a petition from Muncie Lumber Company for an amendment to the town's comprehensive plan, an amendment of the zoning law to change the zoning of the property bounded by Ewing Avenue in the village of Spring Valley, Springbrook Road in the town of Clarkstown, and Pascack Road from an R15 zone to an MR12 zone. In addition, the town received a petition from 171 North Pascack Road Corporation for an amendment of the town's comprehensive plan and an amendment of the zoning law to change the zoning of the property bounded primarily by Pascack Road and Ewing Avenue from an R15 zone to an MR12 zone. The town board, by resolution number 2015-117, determined that the above proposed action may have a significant adverse impact on the environment and issued a positive declaration requiring the preparation of a draft environmental impact statement. The town board, by resolution number 2015-201, scheduled a public scoping session to receive comments on the applicant's draft scoping outline on May 13, 2015 at 8 p.m. at the Rampo Town Hall, 237 Route 59, Suffolk, New York, 10901. All of those interested will be given an opportunity to be heard. Written comments on the draft scoping outline will also be accepted by the town board until 1 p.m. on May 14, 2015. A copy of the draft scoping outline is on file with the Office of the Rampo Town Clerk, Rampo Town Hall, 237 Route 59, Suffolk, New York, 10901, between the hours of 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. And this is signed by Christian G. Sampson, the town clerk. For purposes of the scoping session today, the following documents will be deemed as part of the record. Number one would be Resolution 2015-117, which is the adoption of a positive declaration. Document number two would be the positive declaration. Document number three would be Resolution 2015-201, setting of the public scoping session. Document number four would be the draft scoping outline. Document number five would be the notice of the public scoping session. Document number six would be the affidavit of publication. Document number seven will be the affidavit of posting. And document number eight will be a letter received from the town of Clarkstown dated May 6, 2015. It would be my suggestion, Mr. Supervisor, that we commence the scoping session by having our planning consultant, Mr. Stolman, basically give a little preview about what the SEQA process is at this point in this project. And then I believe the applicant would like to make a presentation, then we can open it up for other public comment. I would ask that those of you who wish to speak this evening state whether you believe the draft scope which the applicant has submitted should be adopted as submitted, and if not, if you would please identify specifically those changes which you recommend be included in the final written scope to ultimately be adopted by the town board.
Okay, so we'll start off with Mr. Stolman.
Good evening. Good evening. As the town attorney said, back in February, the town board adopted a positive declaration, which was a finding that there may be significant adverse environmental impact resulting from the proposed action, the Pascack Ridge project, and requiring the applicant to prepare a draft environmental impact statement. The draft environmental impact statement will assess and analyze the potential environmental impact of the project. The public scoping session was scheduled for tonight. We're holding that scoping session tonight. One of the principles of SEQR, the State Environmental Quality Review Act, is public participation, and that is what tonight is all about. As the town attorney said, the applicant prepared a draft scope for the draft environmental impact statement, and we're here tonight to hear from you, the public, as to whether that draft scope the applicant prepared is satisfactory, or whether there ought to be things added to the draft scope before the town board finalizes and adopts a final scope to give to the applicant to use to prepare the draft environmental impact statement. So after tonight, what the town board will do with the assistance of its consultants and staff is it will prepare a final scope for the draft environmental impact statement and adopt that final scope, give it to the applicant, and then wait for the applicant to submit a proposed draft environmental impact statement. So that's where we are right now, and that's what we're doing.
Okay. Very good, thank you. And now we'll hear from the applicant, Mr. Carbon.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor, members of the Town Board. Ryan Carbon, I'm the counsel to the applicant. I'm here with Dave Ziegler, who is our engineer and surveyor. And as Mr. Stolman noted, the purpose of tonight's meeting is to determine the scope of the environmental review. What it's not is a vote on the project. What it's not is a debate about the project's merits, whether it's good or bad. What it is a list for us of the items that you are determining that we need to study further. Traffic, drainage, circulation, all the things that are in that very extensive document that are before you. And so I don't want to get into a back and forth on whether this is a good idea or a bad idea, because right now you're just telling us those elements that you want us to study. But for the benefit of refreshing the board's recollection and for that of the public, I do think it would be appropriate just to take 2 minutes to summarize the project for you, and so that members of the public who might not have been to the previous meetings, although there have been many, would understand what's going on here. This is a 210-unit proposal. As you know, we are proposing using the MR12 utilization. We have modified since we were last here. Mr. Supervisor, Mr. Ziegler will talk about this at greater length briefly, but we did modify the traffic circulation pattern to eliminate the traffic from flowing into the town of Clarkstown. That was something that had been raised by some of the neighbors and Supervisor Gromack and his colleagues at the last meeting. So that was something that was noted by the applicant. And obviously there is a dispute. We understand it's gotten quite a bit of attention about the merits of the proposal. But whether there's a dispute about the merits of the proposal or not, there were requests and suggestions that were made by the town of Clarkstown, and to the extent that at this early stage we've been able to accommodate that at noting the supervisor's advocacy and that of others, we have tried to do so. So we hope that the board would note that. We've also proposed a four-way traffic signal. We've added to that the Mirror Lake Pascack merger over there. For those folks who spend some time over there, there's been a four-way stop sign there for a long time, even as the traffic volume adjusted. So we have agreed at our expense to upgrade that to a four-way traffic signal to improve traffic safety in that particular neighborhood. We have 105 3- to 4-bedroom units, 105 2-bedroom units. We have set aside 10% of the units in the project for individuals who meet federally defined affordability criteria, and that will be administered by an independent agency that is authorized by HUD to do so in compliance with all of their rules and regulations. We have clustered the development. I don't know if you can see around here. I know you've seen the materials before. There are a number of neighborhoods that exist. We've grouped the units, and our traffic circulation pattern reflects that, as well as the addition of pocket parks for each one of those clusters. I would ask Mr. Ziegler, our engineer, just before we get into the meat and potatoes of the scoping session, just to briefly address those changes in traffic circulation since we were last before you, and also briefly to address the drainage on the site. This has been the subject of extensive discussions over the years with the drainage agency, and Mr. Ziegler can briefly address that as well, with your permission, Mr. Supervisor.
Okay, very good. Mr. Ziegler.
Dave Ziegler from Atzel, Nasher and Ziegler, Land Surveyor. This plan is similar to the one that we had up previously. To the audience left, we have a site plan. On the top, on the bottom is the zoning in the area around the site within 500 to 600 foot. And to the audience right there, we have elevations of the buildings if they want to look at it, detailing the floor plan. That was showed at the 2 previous public hearings. The one change on the site plan is Springbrook Road we had as a town road going through the site and ending up on Ewing. It would have been a dedicated town road, built to town specs, and being that that would connect Springbrook to Ewing, we had the comments, we removed that, and now we show 2 gated access, emergency access only. So there will be no flow of traffic through the site from Springbrook, or from our site onto Springbrook, only emergency access. That changed our plan. It eliminated the town road through it. It also made our plan have to work on its own. So we had to change the units around so we had a complete loop within the site. We had to have better fire access to our buildings. One of the other comments we had in previous meetings was we had a layout that had required some variances. The map before you tonight has no variances. It meets the code in all the yards, separation between the buildings, meets the fire code for the width of the road and the radiuses. In addition, the plan shows now drainage on down by Pascack in 2 areas. So we will meet your just described MS4 regulations, and we'll have our own systems for stormwater management. Basically, that's it. The plan, major changes, was just really eliminating Springbrook Road as a town-dedicated road through the site.
I would just like to ask one question on that Springbrook Road. At one of the early hearings that we had, there was a gentleman who lived on Springbrook Road. I won't mention his name, but he came up and he requested that that not be connected to this, and so could not be a drive-through. He actually, at the next meeting, he came up and he asked an additional question, which you haven't answered, but I'd like you to tell me if you could answer, and that is that he requested that Springbrook also not be utilized during the construction of this project. So this new system, this new loop system, would mean that both of those would be satisfied?
Yes, absolutely. No construction through, because the gate would go up and it would be locked. It's emergency access
I just want to make
gate.
sure that, because I know that
Absolutely.
he came to the second meeting and asked that second part to that, so I
Yes.
just wanted you to clarify that. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, and the reporter is here for us tonight, so we can take all the comments and immediately start to respond to them. That's why the reporter's here.
And that's because any questions or anything that people bring up in the scoping that they want to have studied or think should be studied that's not within the present scoping document will have to be addressed
Yes.
by you, and so that's why the
That's
reporter
correct.
is here. Okay. Mr. Carpenter, did you have anything you wanted to add or at this time? Or?
Nothing further at this time, Mr. President.
Okay. So at this time, we will open it up to people that would like to speak, and I'd like to start off with our supervisor from Clarkstown, Mr. Gromack.
Well, thank you, Mr. Supervisor, members of the Town Board. My name is Alex Gromack. I'm the Town Supervisor of the Town of Clarkstown. At the last 3 public hearings, I've urged the Board to issue a positive declaration under seeker and to prepare a full environmental impact statement so that any adverse environmental impacts can be fully explored, mitigated to the fullest extent possible. I'd like to thank the Board for doing just that and holding these public scoping sessions. As I previously stated, developing an EIS is designed to be an open, interactive process between the town, the applicant, and residents. The results should be a better project that hopefully mitigates to the fullest extent possible about adverse environmental impacts. That being said, I would like to reiterate our concerns. The town of Clarkstown and Mr. Joe Simos of our planning department will get into more detail for the record. On November 2014, the Clarkstown Town Board passed a resolution opposing this change of zone and the requisite amendment to the comprehensive plan. The proposed development of this property would create additional traffic through local residential streets within the town of Clarkstown. In addition, the property is physically constrained with steep slopes, wetlands, high-tension overhead power lines, and the Pascack Brook. The Pascack Brook is a critical county environmental feature and a source of flooding in the town of Clarkstown. This zone change does not fit the character of our local neighborhoods and the burdens of local roadways, water resources, and the natural environment. While we are cautiously hopeful that the EIS will address these concerns, we continue to urge you to use your discretion and reject this zone change and revisit your comprehensive plan. The specific concerns that we have regarding this scoping document have been sent to you by our town planner, Mr. Joe Simos. If you have any other questions on the require further clarifications, regarding our comments, we certainly would welcome them on behalf of the town of Clarkstown. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gromack. And I think your letters to the town were submitted as part of this document and read into the record by our counsel, Mr. Klein. Okay, Shirley, did you want to speak? We'll just go right down that row and then,
Yep.
and then we'll open up the rest of the public.
Okay. Good evening, Supervisor St. Lawrence and members of the Town Board. I appreciate this opportunity to speak to you tonight. I am Shirley Lasker. I'm a councilwoman, deputy supervisor of the town of Clarkstown. While I'm glad that the Town Board listened to our suggestion to issue a positive declaration pursuant to the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act and is requiring the preparation of environmental impact statement, it is imperative that the Town Board take a hard look at the potential environmental impact of these changes and involve the public in the SEQRA process. The specific concerns we have regarding the scoping document have been sent to you. I trust that you will consider our suggestions as you finalize the scope of your review. As I have mentioned at previous meetings, the town of Clarkstown opposes the amendment of the town of Ramapo zoning map and comprehensive plan for the proposed Pascack Ridge development on the grounds that the proposed development of this land at a density of 12 units an acre of multifamily would result in overdevelopment, be out of character with the surrounding area, and have the potential to adversely impact the street network, school system, water resources, and natural environment, all shared with the residents of the town of Clarkstown. These are all issues that should be addressed in the scoping document. Once again, I ask that you not pursue this, that you consider the broader implications of your actions, and that you instead undertake an update of your comprehensive plan. Truly, look at your community, at our county, and our home, and how development of Ramapo affects us all. Again, I implore you to vote against this zone change and update your comprehensive plan and model it as an environmental impact statement as we have done in Clarkstown. As towns, we may have different borders, but we share sewer, air, water, traffic, volunteer ambulance and fire personnel and police services, natural resources, and drainage issues know no boundaries. Your decision will affect all of us in the county, and as such, I call on all the towns and villages in the county to form a consortium to fight developments such as this on environmental grounds, beside the environmental grounds, it puts a strain and burden on all our shared resources and on our taxpayers. It will not only cost the rest of the county in tax dollars to support your zone change, it will negatively impact our quality of life. If we all band together to form a consortium, we can legally challenge zone changes that greatly increase density. Thank you for your consideration. Good night.
Thank you, Terry. You state your name and your address for the for our town clerk.
Dan Caprara, 159 Strawtown Road, New City.
I'm sorry, Dan.
Caprara, C-A-P, Caprara, C-A-P-R-A-R-A.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you for the opportunity to speak here tonight. Supervisor Gromack and Deputy Supervisor Lasker pretty much covered everything I wanted to say. I just want to add that I believe the spot zoning of Pascack Ridge that seems to be going on here, spot zoning as it's often referred to, may lead to precedent-setting changes that other developers will cite when they seek future similar zone changes. So my question is, when does it end? When does it end?
Thank you, Dan.
Joe Simons, Town Planner for the Town of Clarkstown.
Hi, John.
Hi. First, I want to thank you for requiring the development of environmental impact statement as we've recommended and holding this scoping session. I reviewed the scoping document along with our planning board, and you have that, our letter dated May 6, 2015 in the record. But in summary, I'd like to offer the following. Overall, I suggest following a simple outline of stating the existing condition, potential impact, and the proposed mitigation in your environmental impact statement. It's a simple formula, and it makes it a lot easier to follow when you're actually reading it. Secondly, the scoping document includes a section entitled Project Objectives, and that appears as statements of what is hoped that the project will accomplish. Really what is important is what the project will actually do to the environment. So at this point, the project objectives items appear to really be statements which are not yet supported by a complete and adopted EIS, and I believe they really shouldn't be included in the scoping document. Under Section 6, Anticipated Impacts, there are various items that need to be expanded upon or clarified, which I discussed in my letter. I won't go through them all right now.
Are there any that aren't in your letter that you want to mention?
I'm just going to mention a few that I'm going to highlight a few that are in the letter. The DEIS should discuss impacts to open space, recreation and energy, and consistency with community plans and community character, all of which are categories of an environmental impact statement. The specific alternative scenario being considered under Section 7, Description of Alternatives, Item 3, is identified as other. So you haven't identified another alternative. You should really look at several alternative scenarios. In particular, an alternative scenario in which a less dense build-out of the area was undertaken. And for each alternative action, you should examine each potential impact of the proposed as you would for a proposed action. So the same listing of impacts, you go through that with the alternatives and potential impacts for each of those. Potential mitigation for each of those impacts. According to SEQR regulations, you are required to have additional sections in your EIS. I'm going to read them here. You need to have the adverse environmental impacts that cannot be avoided or adequately mitigated if the proposed action is implemented. Any irreversible and irretrievable commitments of environmental resources that would be associated with the proposed action should it be implemented. Any growth-inducing aspects of the proposed action, which I think is very important in this aspect, in this project. And thirdly, impacts of the proposed action on the use and conservation of energy. Lastly, as this proposed amendment would potentially result in other similar areas in the town of Ramapo being proposed to be developed at a higher density than currently zoned, as stated before, the town should seriously consider an update to your comprehensive plan. And such an action such actions, the growth-inducing aspects, should be examined as an alternative scenario in the EIS. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. I'd like to take this opportunity. You mentioned anticipated impacts, Section 6. I just want to read them quickly. Changes to the physical environment impact and the impacts to slopes, soil, water resources. This is what's in our scoping session. I want to ask Mr. Stolman a question about this. Slopes, soil, water resources, floodplain, wetlands, flora and fauna, proposed land use description, proposed zoning description, impacts of existing circulation system, impacts to the mass transit routes, impacts to the development constraints, map and text, overhead power line, impacts to development, impacts to the underground water and sewer facilities, impacts to the architectural and cultural resources, impacts to air quality, impacts to noise conditions, impacts to police and fire services, impacts to the schools, which Ms. Lesker just referenced, visual impacts, mitigating measures, and future without project. So, Mr. Stolman, when you review this to Mr. Stamos' question, you look at the potential mitigations for each one of these potential impacts? Correct. Correct? Okay. Okay. Now, anybody that would like to speak, just raise your hand. This gentleman in row 2. We'll go right down the rows there. Come right up, sir.
I don't know. Thank you for calling me a gentleman. Captain Justin Schwartz with the Spring Valley Fire Department, also Public Information Officer. I found pretty good that the proclamation you're saying building safety. And first of all, we haven't seen the plans. Spring Valley Fire Department has not received any of these plans since the last I've been here. And just by their saying that it meets it, I haven't seen it. So would love to have a copy of it. Second part, you say building and safety. I have been observing your courts, so you have laws. You're asking for safety. 25% are built here with certificate of, now with use of no use of occupancy. They continue to use it without construction, without permits. A report dated January 28th by the Building and State and Codes, which you have answered, but you have not even met minimum standards. So the faith in your town in enforcing these laws, and spot zoning, I think it's wherever they put it, there is little or no enforcement. You talked about, the last gentleman spoke about dumping. Well, yesterday in Tuesday's court, you had a gentleman was caught. Police department here caught him, comes to court, and town attorneys asked for a $25 dumping fee. It's cost of doing business, Mr. Supervisor. So when you make a proclamation of building and safety, I'm just putting it on record, as I said before, you put the volunteer firefighters and the residents at risk. You have a history in the last 2.5 years. Really, it's a cost of doing business. It's a process of seeking forgiveness rather than permission. So, to vote for this, to put it in there, I'm thankful that we have the town of Clarkstown at least going against this. Every time I go to the planning board, voice it, just a lone voice. It's nothing on the builder. Builder's a reputable guy. I know him. Got good business in Spring Valley. But he's paying the price of what you have allowed to come into Ramapo. The planning board, just everything they do is just rubber stamped. The zoning board rubber stamps, and it just builds and builds and builds and builds. I like to see the plans for that. It's just a matter of time when someone's life. So I would ask you really vehemently to vote no. Stop the building, do a real master plan, which you don't have.
My name is Gail Mojo, and I live in Clarkstown. Thank you all, my supervisor and all the people from Clarkstown who've taken their time to come. Chris, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. When you ran for office, you were supposed to work for all the people. You only care about some of the people. It's not fair to all of us. The other thing is the overcrowding, the traffic. You don't live there. Your people who check traffic aren't there when it's busy. I know myself, to get out on Pascack Road in rush hour sometimes takes as much as 15 minutes, and not rush hour, sometimes as much as 10. Tonight, when I left my house to come here, 17 cars went both ways before I could pull out. Can you imagine what this traffic's going to be like after this? And our volunteers. They're taxed as it is. They're taxed financially. They're taxed by working extra hours to support their families because our taxes are so high because we're footing the bill for all these other people. What we need to do is we need to start to think. And think from the heart, not your pocket or what you can get. But it's time you started thinking of the taxpayers of this community. It's not fair to them. The other thing is the tax breaks, the exemptions. We're all picking up the slack for that. Whether it be in the town of Ramapo or the town of Clarkstown, we're picking up the slack. It's not fair to us. Flooding. Have you had a flood in your house? I have. I live by the Pascack Brook. And no offense to Springbrook, but I never had water till they started building a Springbrook. What's going to happen now? I hope you think about these things and not just sit there like, as far as I'm concerned, like a bunch of figurines. Because we're not getting anywhere fast. You're doing what you want, not what the public wants. And it's time you took stock of it. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Who would like to speak next? Come right up.
Good evening, how are you?
Good, Frank.
I'm Frank Borelli, councilman from the town of Clarkstown. I was here in February, and in the spirit of the town attorney's comment earlier about keeping our comments to anything to the scoping session, I'll try to do that as best as I can. And really what I wanted to do is talk about what our planner and our planning board has done. So I really want to support the comments that were submitted on May 6th. You have a letter. Joe's already described some of those specific ones. But he made a number of valid points and comments, including the ones that you consider an alternative that's less dense. So I just wanted to highlight that in his report. And also I wanted to support an update to your comprehensive plan and consider that the adverse effects this project will have. I would simply will state I am objecting to the project. I think it's on our border. It's very close. It's going to have a very negative effect not only on the residents of Ramapo, but the residents of Clarkstown. And for the record, I just wanted to continue to state that and also support all the comments in Mr. Samos's memo, which is a representative report from our planning board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Chris Carey. I'm a legislator for District 9 for Rockland County. And since this is my fourth time here and I have read my detailed comments into the record, I'm going to make it brief tonight. However, I will repeat some of my conclusions that I've said each time I'm here. And I want to remind the town of Ramapo that you're not an island and that poor planning decisions that are decided upon here impact all those in Rockland County and the quality of living for the rest of us. Again, I reiterate my request that you stop this project, redo your comprehensive plan. This project makes no sense for the people of Ramapo, the people of Clarkstown, or the people of Rockland County. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You're next, okay?
Good evening, Mr. Supervisor, members of the town board. George Homan, I'm a councilman in the town of Clarkstown, and I'm a resident of Nanuet. I actually live about half a mile from the project. I live at 5 Lakeshore Drive, Nanuet. I've spoken at each of these meetings, and I'd add to the comments that in support of our planning board and our town planner and my colleagues that have spoken before me. At each of the meetings, I've raised different concerns. I would urge that you would vote no and reject this project completely. And I want to point out just a couple of things in the spirit of looking at the actual scoping document, which I do think is incomplete. as it relates to looking at alternatives. There's an opportunity, and really you should be looking at a less dense opportunity within your existing zoning structure and what that build would look like. You should also be looking at your overall comprehensive plan. I believe that this is really a project that's stepping too far initially, because in looking at your overall comprehensive plan, you will be forced to look at this project in its totality for your entire town. I don't believe that that's happening within this document. I certainly don't believe that it's happening as it relates to development in general right now. This is a major concern because there are issues with that have already been hit with our schools, and certainly with sewage and wastewater, that we're looking at, as well as stormwater. But overall, you need to look at your entire zoning. This is a decision that essentially is spot zoning. You're looking at this one project, allowing this developer to come in and looking at an incredibly dense zone. How can you make a determination if by approving this that you're actually meeting the housing needs of the totality of the residents of the town of Ramapo? An update of your comprehensive plan would require you to take a look at all of your housing stock to see what's needed, to see if this zone that's proposed would actually meet your housing needs. You're not doing that. And instead what you're doing is you're allowing a developer to drive the process, and you're shortchanging your residents. I would urge that this project be shelved and that you would take an update of your comprehensive plan. It's much needed. Thank you.
Hello, good evening. Deborah Munitz, 5 Rose Hill Road, Suffern. Good. Thank you for having this public hearing on the scoping. I think some of my comments are going to reiterate actually some of the ones that were recently brought up. A lot of people have asked, oh, you need to consider the comprehensive plan, and I actually, some of my comments are comments, and I will give you a written document. But some of them are actually questions that I'm hoping that at the end of this hearing, since it is a hearing, that we can hear back possibly from the attorney about process and how things flow, because I think we're all a little confused on that. So there are several different decisions that need to be evaluated and addressed. Should the Town of Ramapo comprehensive plan be changed at this time? And related to that question, how does the scoping document support this decision? Is the current process being followed appropriately, or should it be modified to help support a clearer decision-making process and record? That's like a first big issue. The second one is, should this particular site versus all other sites be considered for downzoning? And related to that question, does it make sense to downzone it from MR15 to MR12, or would an alternative zoning designation be appropriate? And also related to this, does it make sense to consider the creation of a new multifamily residential use that is more moderate? For example, you could take an MR8 with a limit of 30 feet in height versus 40 feet in height. And would that be a more appropriate method to address zone changes in medium density and transitional neighborhoods? The third issue is, what are the environmental impacts of the board approving the change in zoning of the Muncie lumber parcel specifically as proposed? The fourth is, should 171 North Pascack Ridge, a property of less than 4 acres in size, along a major thoroughfare and not even meeting the qualifications for consideration of MR12, even be considered for the MR12 designation, or even MR8 for that matter, at all? It's already requiring a variance. So we're hearing proposals from the representatives of Muncie Lumber, but the proposal that's on the table right now is for this entire area. And, a lot of people have used, they're saying it's spot zoning. I agree it is spot zoning, because there is no real opportunity for the other properties to be consolidated appropriately, and it's not even being evaluated. The current scoping outline is clearly designed for an EIS for the sole benefit of Muncie Lumber, and does not address the other 3 main questions adequately, and cannot be readily made to do so. So I'm obviously not supporting the scoping document as it is currently outlined. It's inappropriate for any specific applicant to be driving the analysis of a change in comprehensive plan of the town of Rampo, and the scoping for that change should be considered in a separate document that's similarly outlined. While the planner, John Lang, is capable of representing the interests of Muncie Lumber in the application, he is not suitable for driving the scoping and EIS analysis related to the underlying question related to changing the town of Ramapo comprehensive plan. It would be appropriate for, and it is requested, that the town board recognize the inherent conflict of this application and separate the main issues of the first two questions related to the comprehensive plan from the second set of questions related to a specific developer's request into two separate paths to be considered and managed separately, albeit probably in tandem during the same timeframes and during the same meetings. They are separate issues. So the first thing is I have a lot of comments related to the changes in the comprehensive plan. That's probably where the majority of my comments are, because this obviously was written for the Muncie Lumber application. The basic outline submitted could be the basis for a new outline specific to the comprehensive plan with modifications. Time for public comments should be allowed to deal with this request. In order to consider a change to the comprehensive plan, the analysis must be done comprehensively and address townwide needs and zones. The process should start with the inclusion of an up-to-date land use map that includes the village zoning. Villages are part of the town of Rampo. The last map of this sort was produced, to my knowledge, in 2008. I haven't seen one since then. The following would be key questions and analysis to be included in the consideration of changing the comprehensive plan. What was the impact of the last change to the comprehensive plan? What development has occurred, or what plans have been approved since 2004? A table of all development plans approved or built could be created by the town of Rampo, Building and Planning Department, and the town of Rampo should be cognizant of the development that's occurred the last decade before making any decisions. Obviously, you need to know where are we in this process. There should be some analysis of what the additional development potential is of those areas within the unincorporated portions of the town of Rampo under the existing zoning designations. Massive development is occurring through major home renovations and additions. They're already going on within the town. Lot consolidation and new building is being applied for on a regular basis before any new changes are made in zoning are considered to make medium density areas high density. An analysis of where we are with respect to development in existing higher density zones should be completed. I mean, it's only fair. And what are the needs of the residents of the town of Rampo, including the villages, for new housing? Some areas want limited development and low density, and others want more housing or specific types of housing. We have to start by acknowledging demand and inventory across the board. Diversified housing is needed in the town of Rampo, but diversified housing does not need to exist in every 25-acre parcel of the town. Is there a real justification for downzoning of medium-density housing to high-density housing, or is there already an existing solution to the perceived need? The town should update the analysis done as of February 2013. I'm giving you an attachment of an analysis that I did. If I can do it, you guys can do it, okay? Of the status of those properties identified for multifamily development to reflect current status before consideration of any changes. The town should also include an analysis of all vacant land showing what potential there is for future development as per the existing plan. How many lots are in the R15C areas that have not been built up to the allowance of R15C? If there's an inherent planning benefit to multifamily housing zoning over the medium-high density zoning, why not consider introducing these MRX zonings into those areas already considered for medium-high density development before medium density areas are affected? John Lang made comments in the past that MR8 may be preferable to development along, I guess this is wrong, in lieu of the R15C pattern. So why not start by addressing these problematic R15C designated areas? An explanation and analysis comparing development with examples in and all R15 or denser zoning should be included, as the public needs to better understand what the town planners are dealing with. So there's sort of this inherent argument that this is better than what could happen, but as much as that statement's been made in prior documents, Nowhere has it actually been explained, and that should be part of the analysis. The town of Ramapo is not limited to existing zoning designations, and new zoning could be created. So for instance, you could create an MR8 2.2, right? Where all the provisions of MR8 apply, but the units could be limited to two-story buildings, okay? To make sure that there's less of an impact on shifting zoning and to address fire safety concerns. Right now, there's a very big difference between the single-family lots and the appearance and impact of these very large, three-story plus units. And you could actually take, very easily amend the bulk use tables and the rest to introduce something that's inherently the same, but just a little shorter, and that would address a lot of fire safety concerns. Any considerations, changes to the comprehensive plan need to address and prevent a domino effect of downzoning requests. Muncie Lumber requested a change in zoning and justified this request because the town board had already considered the downzoning of the Patrick Farm, the other change to the comprehensive plan. It was the only one there. So why was this site chosen for downzoning over other sites in the medium-density housing area? Arguably, if the town wanted to introduce higher-density housing into the Hillcrest area, the lots adjacent to New Square would be more appropriate. That being the case, what is to stop developers from buying up homes in the rest of Hillcrest and Muncie in medium-density areas and then demanding that the town consider downzoning them as well? Why is this site, arguably the one with the most environmental issues and utility encumbrances, why is it arguably the most appropriate? I haven't seen any justification of that. The town of Ramapo must consider the impact of increased population on the town and its services. That's nowhere in this document. First, the method for forecasting population increases must be addressed so that it actually reflects population trends in the town of Ramapo, particularly in the unincorporated portion of the town of Ramapo that's being considered. The town should analyze existing trends and services compared to population so accurate increased needs in police, fire safety personnel, sanitation personnel, etc. can be analyzed. The town of Ramapo must develop a method for analyzing the tax benefit or lack thereof of higher density zoning compared to lower density zoning. I mean, does this even make financial sense? This analysis should be part of the overall consideration of increasing zoning density in Ramapo. The town of Ramapo must develop a method for accurately forecasting the cost of increased development to running the town. All the cost areas, there is going to be an increase, and before you start changing the comprehensive plan, let's figure out, how we can put some kind of metric on this. The town of Ramapo should develop a method for analyzing water needs for increased population and forecasts. This is a big issue. We have the water task force going on. The supervisor appropriately participated in stopping the desal plant, but we need to live within our means with respect to water here in Rockland County, and this is a really big issue right now. All forecasts should be tied to the legal definitions of what a bedroom is based upon the town code, and not based upon developer forecasts. The town of Ramapo must proactively address the makeup of new multifamily developments to avoid purely white population clusters. How can the town do a better job of making sure that the new development that's the result of these, honestly, they're developer gifts, it's all right, it happens, actually are to the benefit of all members of the town of Ramapo? You need to vary the size of the units. You need to develop rules for marketing the units or allowing for open application of units. They can't all be private sales. The town of Ramapo should be considering the existing tree coverage in consideration of appropriate areas for multifamily residential and promote real clustered housing. There should be no MR12 and MR16. Just why even go there? MR16 style homes should be considered as methods to keep existing mature trees in areas where MR8 homes have been approved. You should use that as a design for clustering, not as an actual alternative. The town of Ramapo must consider the impact of schools, both public and private, for increased density housing. There are problems already in both the public and private school systems in meeting the needs for more students. So, there's already a problem when we're having illegal schools and we're having all the rest. I mean, it's a very big strain, and we can't pretend that it's not going to put more of a strain and possibly trigger, more illegal schooling issues. We can't go there. The town of Ramapo should include in its consideration of appropriateness of location for changes in zoning to high-density designation the environmental aspects of the site, including community character. Most remaining open spaces in the town of Ramapo, like this Pascack Ridge location, remain undeveloped because they are just the least appropriate for development. Considerations such as upzoning would be as equally appropriate as downzoning. The selection of location must be justifiable by the town board to all residents of Ramapo without consideration of the developer's needs or wants. For existing homeowners in areas impacted by this increased development, what will be the impact to their property values caused by the new development? If existing homeowner values are decreased, should property assessments be decreased to decrease their taxes because their homes have been devalued? Is there actually a net benefit to the town by doing this? What about considering the costs? So as far as this specific EIS, because this really is only about Muncie Lumber, and I understand that it's flowing through, but it's so inappropriate to consider it without, it's like putting the cart before the horse. And I think if you do the rest of the homework and you do the right thing, I don't think so, but maybe the results will be that this is a great idea. I don't see it. I would love to see it justified. If you get to the point where it's appropriate to even consider it, I wouldn't recommend that they spend a penny even pursuing it until you've come to that conclusion, which is the first decision that needs to be made. Then it would make sense for them to do this EIS. Under the EIS, under the overview and description section, all the existing wetlands should have a current ACO-JD. In the prior documentation, it mentioned that there was one, but there was actually, it was very incomplete. There were no maps. There was nothing that indicated that it's actually the right kind of documentation that's necessary. The DEC and county streams and wetlands, if applicable, should have current maps approved by the state and county. Population forecasts should be included with details regarding the types of housing, the number of rooms. Under the anticipated impact section, there should be add an analysis of tree loss. There should be like, there's a flora and fauna, but it really is not specific. Traffic analysis based upon Ramapo-specific population projections and not based upon similar housing from co-ops and condos in Florida that are decades old. So, we know that you're not going to have these 4-bedroom condos with 2 people in it. So address the traffic problems, like you got that one-way tunnel in the area. We got to make sure that things like that are actually specifically mentioned in the scoping document. I already mentioned water usage. The water usage should be specified. The sewer impacts should be specified. The sanitation impacts should be specified. Stormwater facilities. I didn't see the plans, and I know I have no idea what their stormwater plans are. That should be spelled out if they're doing anything and whether or not the town's suddenly going to be on the hook for maintenance. Under the alternative section, in addition to the no action and the MR16 versus MR12 versus MR8, please include a clustered development solution based upon the existing density. It's obviously cheaper for the developer to do a clustered housing solution, and if that's the appropriate way for them to make money, they should consider that. Maybe modify, instead of just doing the MR8, do a modified MR8, with 2 stories. So instead of 210 units, 105 units. It's still a lot more than 40 units. In addition to a description of the alternatives, there should be a summary table of impacts related to those that include the key forecasts, like the population, the taxes, the costs, the trees preserved. In the background section, a lot of those topics, as the supervisor pointed out, are appropriate to scoping for the comprehensive plan. It's just not appropriate that they're all mixed up the way they are. You need to make these decisions separately, and they need to be pulled apart. The scoping should state the necessity that there be a current response to the DIS from all interested agencies and parties prior to moving on to the FEIS stage. Or if no response has been submitted, a member of the planning or DPW should contact the agency for a statement regarding why no report has been submitted, and they should provide a written summary of the reasons and unofficial comments on their own. There should be an actual response from everybody, instead of moving on assuming no response. All submissions should be submitted to the town in printed and electronic format to facilitate FOILs and review processes and to reduce the impact of supporting the public information gathering on town employees. There's no reason we should all be paying for people to scan documents and make copies when it's just as cheap for these guys to submit it electronically. It should be agreed in advance that all public hearings will allow for a minimum of 2 additional weeks for public comments to be made in writing to allow time for the public to FOIL the documents submitted and to react to the information presented in the public hearings. I think that that's just something that you guys should always be doing. And I'd like to make it a specific request and make it part of the scoping document so that people have an expectation of how this will flow. And I've included an attachment, which is this analysis that I did, and whoever is tasked with doing something similar, which I hope you will task them with doing, I'd be happy to share my spreadsheets. Thank you. I got to make two more comments. The architect renderings that are here, I have a question and maybe they can answer it at the end. The elevations show what looks like a 4th attic floor, but only 3 floors are shown in the floor plan, so I was curious about that, and I was curious about the basements. Maybe they can talk about that. So if you have 105, Mr. Carbon clarified that the top 2 floors are the 3 to 4 bedroom apartments, we're going to call them 4, and that the bottom floor is the 2-bedroom unit, but I'm assuming there's a basement, so that could easily become 4 bedrooms. So, you know, in my mind, when you look at this, it's really like having 210 4-bedroom apartments. And if you have a couple people in each of the bedrooms, the impact that I'm seeing that should be considered is 1,680 people in 25 acres. And that's a lot. And I think that you need to recognize it's not a terrible thing, it's not a legal thing, it's just a realistic thing that we might have to support that. And it doesn't make it wrong, it just needs to be planned for, and it needs to be, you know, acknowledged, and it needs to be brought into the decision-making process. And then finally, I did have a question about the separation of buildings. I'll look at the site plan later. They look awfully close together for something so tall. So, you know, and anything over 30 stories, you have all these fire safety issues and the need for roads, and I don't know that this has been really looked at by the fire department. The only comments that I saw, and you've got this, you're saying that you're going to close the comment period tomorrow at 1 o'clock, and when I did my gathering, the only comments that I saw were from Clarkstown. I didn't see an independent review of this scoping document from our new town planner, and there should have been something in there because I would hope that they would do a great job. I didn't see things from, you know, the fire department or anybody else who should be part of, you know, putting their comments into these things and making their requests for you know, for questions to be answered. So I do think it's inappropriate for you to close this to written comments by tomorrow. I think you should hold it open for a week and let those people know.
Thank you. How are you doing? How are you doing? Do you need a few more minutes? You let me know if you need it. That was a lot there, I know, and so, okay, come right up, man. Just let me know if you need a break.
Hi, my name is Margaret Comer. I live at 11 Forest Brook Road.
I'm sorry?
11 Forest Brook Road. Okay. Since this project has started, my life has changed as well, because as far as I know, I was never in a flood zone. And all of a sudden, now I have to have flood insurance because I got a letter from FEMA stating that I'm in the flood zone. And I lived here for 32 years and never was in the flood zone. And all of a sudden, this project starts up and I'm in the flood zone. So I actually, I'm going extra. I'm going out there. I have to pay for this insurance because this new project has started. So I just want you to know that it's unfair to me because I have done a lot of work in my house. I have put 4 drains in there. I have a fence put up. I've done all the protection that I could get. But it's not any good because now I'm in the flood zone and I'm paying extra money and I'm a widow. So I just want to know if they had reviewed this before they had started this project. Because if you're saying I'm in a flood zone, then you're saying that I will be destroyed if they build up there. So I'm really in real trouble. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. But I just want to clarify that you were not put in the flood zone because of this project. The federal laws have changed as to who is what, and there's a new map that was put out by the federal government for floodplains, but it would not be a consequence of this project, correct, Council?
That's correct.
And that map came out, I think, in January. Thank you.
Well, does that make it worse for me now because I can be flooded?
But that had, I just wanted you to know, it had nothing to do with this project. The changes in the floodplain were designations by the federal government.
There are only 2 houses in the floodplain. 2 houses, my house and the neighbor next door, nobody else. So if,
I want to spell your name correctly.
C-O-N-E-R.
Just like it's ours. And it's Margaret? Yes. C-O-N-E-R.
Thank you, Margaret.
Okay, thank you very much.
Cool man.
Thank you, Margaret.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Sarah Evans, and I'm a resident of Pascat Road. I live on Pascat Road. And over the last 6 months, I've seen the traffic increase more than 50% as it is. When I'm going to work in the morning, I have to allow an extra 15 minutes just to get out of my driveway. Now, one of the gentlemen spoke earlier that he had made arrangements to change the 4-way stop signs into traffic lights to monitor the traffic. To go where? Where's it going to go once it goes through those red lights? There is no traffic light east or west. And to go on Pascat Road, you go all the way to Smith Road, where there's 1 red light. So where is traffic going to go? It would be very interesting to see what would a 4-way traffic signal impact traffic that there's no place for it to go. Is it going to go on Erickson Road? Is it going to go back up Ewing Avenue? How is it going to get out of that development? Being that it's not going to be open, as was indicated earlier. It's going to be gated specifically for emergencies. So where's the traffic going to go? Where's the fuel emission going to go? When the kids are in the communities, Clarkstown Community Center, right across on Clarkstown on Pascat Road, playing in the basketball court. This is a serious issue, and it's going to impact that community, not only with the structuring of the multifamily housing, but the electrical grid, the magnetic field that's there. What are the health impacts on that issue, building those houses that close to the electrical magnetic field? These are interesting things that needs to be addressed before any zoning has changed. I don't know about any of you, but have you tried to get an apartment into the rezoned areas in East Ramapo already? It's literally non-existent. People of color, of diverse ethnicity, cannot rent apartments in those rezoned buildings. They're privately rented. They're built specific. And to those of you that don't understand specific, it has 2 kitchens. They're built with 2 kitchens. So how many of us utilize 2 kitchens? There's a specific group of people that utilizes 2 kitchens. So if you're going to bring everybody into the loop, build them in a fashion where everybody can utilize them. Where if everybody's going to suffer from the congestion, everybody has to pay their taxes. Let everybody be able to live in them. And from what I've seen all over Spring Valley, where there's a street corner that was a private house, it is now a multi-dwelling. When is it going to stop? Is it going to take the railroads next? You're going to be building across the railroads next. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans.
Robert Romanowski, 183 Maple Avenue, Muncie.
What I want to address is the stormwater runoff, which you already addressed here tonight. You had Mr. Zarinko and Mr. Sadowski were here, and they were talking about the stormwater runoff, how they use curb cap covers to prevent the flow of litter into Lake Suzanne. And the same thing could be happening here. I just happened to have the Rockland County Times from April 30th through May 6th. And if you go to one of the pages here, it says Scenes of Rockland. I want to show it to the board and to the public. It says the charming environs of Lake Suzanne and Muncie, which shows all the filth and litter that is ending up in Lake Suzanne, even with all the curb covers and everything else that the town is doing. And I just hope that you take the runoff into consideration and kind of clean up Lake Suzanne and do something about this, because I don't think all these people would like the Pascack Brook to look like Lake Suzanne. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
My first meeting, anyway. So I just moved to 56 Eagle Ridge Way. It's in Nanuet. I drive 56 Eagle Ridge Way.
And what's your name?
Bonnie Marks. Okay. Yeah, and so I drive actually on that Pascack Road, whatever it's called, Pascack Road, and I seen such potholes this year that were, oh my gosh, I'm sure many cars had problems with their tires and everything. Now, from what I understand also, when there's a pothole and once it's reported, if somebody else has an occurrence, then whoever's responsible for that road has to pay for the damage on the car. So if the potholes were not actually fixed this year, and they were very large, I guess that just means that whoever's responsible for those roads is going to have to pay for all that pothole damage when there's more and more traffic running over those roads and there's more damage. But aside from the cost factor, I'm listening to a lot of people speak, and I just can't stop hearing in my head, or seeing in my head Hurricane Katrina, how people do things and they don't look at the consequences of things. So, like, had the federal government really seen what possibly could have happened, and I know people in federal government, so I know that, yeah, this is true, that there could have been a better job done so that all these people wouldn't have lost their lives. Well, I think that consequences really need to be looked at here. I'm hearing about fire codes and building codes and all this stuff, and I'm thinking about the safety of people. And I'm not talking about the safety of only the people who are living around the area. I'm talking about the safety of the people in those buildings. If the fire engines can't get to any fires in those buildings, people will die. If the ambulances can't get there on time because of traffic, people can die. And then who is really responsible for all these things happening? Is it the people who actually decided to build those buildings in the first place? I mean, these are the things that are going through my mind, and because I care about people. And I would hate to see the consequences of, gee, if I do this, what will happen? Gee, I'm not thinking about if I do this, what will happen, which we learn when we're little kids, actually. But to not even look into the future and see these consequences, these common sense consequences, kind of annoys me, because I'm sure that if there are traffic issues, ambulances won't get there on time. When there's big potholes, I can just see the fire engine going and getting a flat tire. I don't know, or the water issues, or when we have more storms and then there's more power outages and more people who don't have heat and water. I'm sorry, I just see all these problems, and if this can occur, then I think that's something to consider.
Bonnie.
Thank you.
Say your last name. M-A-R. Oh, okay, that's close. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak in the scoping session?
The shame our elected officials left before they could fix the potholes. All of our elected officials left, so they don't know about the potholes.
Okay, yes, ma'am. Right up.
David and Ryan, those are scoping sessions, from tomorrow.
My name is Marlene Zinman, 6 Lauren Drive in Nanuet. I live in the town of Clarkstown. My husband and I both work part-time, so we're frequently home and about in the mornings. We work in the afternoon. I'm sure many of the people in this room are familiar with the Muncie Trails buses. They service a very specific community. Now, on more than one occasion, I've been trying to get down Pascack Road and through the one-way tunnel. This is about 11 o'clock in the morning. 11 o'clock in the morning, it's not rush hour. It's not the time that a bus would normally be carrying clientele where they need to be. And the bus is trying to get through the one-way tunnel. Now, the bus has a little bit of a problem getting through the one-way tunnel. This is on a day, and again at an hour, when there is very little traffic. I'm sitting on Pascack Road, and I'm waiting for this bus. The traffic is now backed up Pascack Road all the way down the yin-yang, and this bus cannot make the turn and come through. So I wonder, have the traffic evaluations considered the Muncie Trails or buses of that kind servicing the community that's being potentially going to be built up the road from me? So if those buses are coming through at 11 o'clock, they're not going to be coming through at 11 o'clock in the morning on Friday or the other days that they have to do it. They're going to be coming on rush hour because they have to get home before, bring the people before a specific hour. Well, where am I on Pascack Road or coming through the tunnel waiting for that bus to come through? I don't even know if it's legal, but they're doing it. So again, these traffic evaluations have to consider all hours of the day, all facets of traffic, and what is the impact going to be on the residents who live there. I'm not leaving the house at rush hour. Fortunately, I'm semi-retired. I get to go off and about at off hours. And there's even an impact to me at that time as well. I pity the poor people who have to get out to get to work at 8 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock in the morning and have to allow an extra 15 or 20 minutes to get out on Pascack Road. I see it myself, but again, I have a little more time freedom. We have to consider all these things. And again, those type of buses are going to be coming into our area because they're going to be servicing that community. Has that been considered? That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, counsel?
Yes, I have one question for Mr. Carbett, if I may. The town received the draft scoping document at the end of March. Under seeker rules, it's the lead agency, the town board's obligation to provide a final scope within 60 days. It's my understanding that after tonight, we will be directing that our planning consultant, Mr. Stolman, prepare a proposed final scope, which incorporates the draft scope, the comments made this evening, and any recommendations that he will have to the town board. And I don't believe that will be completed within that 60-day period. So the request of Mr. Carbon is to get your consent to extend the preparation of the final scope through June 13th. That's fine. Okay. Next, Mr. Stolman, just a couple of questions or comments. One thing which I don't believe was addressed in the draft scope, which came up tonight, are tax impacts. Will you be including that in the draft scope as one of the subjects for review by the applicant?
Yes.
Okay. Also, under seeker regulations, there's a requirement that there be a detail as to what is included in the text of the draft environmental impact statement and what would be included as an appendix. I believe usually the appendices would be the full documents such as the air quality report, the traffic report. I assume your final scope will address what will be in the text of the DIS and what will be appended to that. Is that correct?
Sure, correct.
Okay. Those are the only comments that I have. And again, it would be our recommendation that the scoping session for public comment be closed. Written comments would be entertained through 1 o'clock tomorrow. And then it will be Mr. Stolman's charge to prepare a draft final written scope, which will be presented to the board at an upcoming meeting. And in the meantime, I believe he will receive responsive comments from the applicant.
Okay, so I have a motion to adjourn this.
I have one comment.
Go right ahead, Mr. Ullman.
I would like to please include, I know some of the traffic studies are done randomly. They pick two random times to do a traffic study. I want it not random. I want 7-day-week study, both morning, afternoon, and evening study, please. That's 21 studies on the traffic. It could be one study, but 21 times.
Okay. Any other comments? So
So the motion would be to close the scoping session.
Motion to close the scoping session moved by Mr. Ullman, seconded by Mr. Friedman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously. Okay. With that, we have
Public participation.
public participation. Anybody in the public would like to speak, come up.
It's Robert Romanowski, 183 Maple Avenue, Muncie. There are two bills before the New York State Legislature that would provide a state-appointed monitor to the East Ramapo School District. This monitor was represented in a report from the fiscal monitor, Hank Greenberg, who was appointed by the Governor, Andrew Cuomo, to look into the operation of the school district and provide a report with recommendations. Now, a monitor is I looked this up in a dictionary, a monitor is a person who gives advice or caution. The monitor here is to give advice or caution to the school board, not how to run the district, and I believe the monitor would show tremendous restraint before overriding the school board. What I have here, I want to present this, one to the town clerk and one to each board member, even the ones that are not present. I've written a resolution, which I'd like this town board to adopt, to encourage the state legislature to provide a fiscal monitor to the East Ramapo School District. It reads, whereas two bills have been introduced into the New York State Legislature, A 5355 in the New York State Assembly and S 3821 in New York State Senate, which would authorize the Commissioner of Education to appoint a special state monitor to oversee the East Ramapo School District. And whereas the town board of the town of Ramapo has a deep concern for the students of the East Ramapo Central School District. And whereas believes that a quality education is fundamental to one becoming a productive member of society. And whereas the town board of the town of Ramapo is aware of the unique conditions faced by the East Ramapo School District. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the town board of the town of Ramapo strongly urges the New York State Assembly to approve Bill A 5355 and for the New York State Senate to approve Bill S 3821 and for the New York State Governor Andrew Cuomo to sign this legislation into law. How this board reacts to this resolution will give an indication of where you stand with public schools for both school districts that exist in the town of Ramapo. 3 of the board members are up for election this year, and the people of the town of Ramapo should know where you stand on this. So I'd like to ask the board to approve this resolution tonight, and if you do not approve this resolution, I would like you to explain why you're not approving this resolution, because I know this board in the past has said they have done things for the school district by providing programs. Now provide this resolution to the state legislature. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Romanowski. Anybody else? Motion to close public participation. Moved by Mr. Friedman, second by Mr. Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously. Motion to adjourn. Moved by Mr. Ullman, second by Mr. Friedman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously. Good night. Thank you very much.